Is there a place and time where logic breaks down and wonderment begins? Could that be somewhere at some time along an infinite line between the reasonable and the highly unlikely? Join us on a journey into the improbable. Makeshift Stories presents Episode 321, The Meatspace Hare, read by Steve Peterson. Opening and closing theme by Matthew Erdmann. Somewhere and sometime your AI boss might not be happy with your performance.
An extremely rare, fully hand-restored Aston Martin Lagonda roared past, trailing a cloud of lingering exhaust. Matteo did a quick mental calculation of the fines for running an ancient V8 internal combustion engine and whistled. This is New Rio, he reminded himself. Cost was no object. Over the years, he had learned how to negotiate the enclave like an electrician, there to work, not to live. It was the kind of place you wouldn't expect someone to be selling additively manufactured knockoffs, but that was what he had been paid handsomely to verify. A message icon began flashing urgently in the corner of Matteo's vision. It was Renata, and he had a meeting in 5 minutes. She's got a talent for timing. Shall I suppress notices from your sister for the next hour? Alfred asked. Having a Turing-level assistant like Alfred surgically implanted behind his left ear gave Matteo a competitive edge. He hesitated. Sure. Renata only contacted him when she needed money, help, or both. After their parents died in a crash when they were kids, Matteo had no choice but to become the responsible one. He shot off a terse message. How much this time? Matteo, already sweating from the short walk between the security checkpoint and the New Rio commercial zone, spotted the shop and crossed the street. A white-gloved human attendant watched him approach, giving Matteo the once-over before checking a palm-sized handheld. He looked up. You're the authenticator? Yeah, I've got an appointment with Camilla dos Santos. The man pointed the handheld at Matteo. After a moment, there was a melodic chime. Ms. dos Santos is expecting you. He took off his gloves, pressed his thumb to the door, and the big security glass buzzed open. Inside the shop, carefully lit display cases on plinths underscored the rarity of their contents. Matteo ignored them and headed to the back, where an elegant woman sat behind a black pearlwood desk. She had chosen her furniture as carefully as her inventory. He noted the minor imperfections in the finish. An original Hans Wegner, not a replica. A good sign. Camilla stood, extending a hand. Mister. Her eyes flicked left to read something in her contacts, then she refocused on Matteo. Mr. Becker, pleased to meet you. Rumor has it you're top in the field. Don't believe everything you read online. I have my critics. Matteo grasped her hand. No need to be so modest. Mr. Hernandez only hires the best. Now please come this way. Camilla led Matteo to a secured back room, waiting for the door to close, before bringing out a white box and carefully opening it. He noted a meticulously prepared notarized dossier laid out on the table. The object's provenance. Ms. dos Santos was a professional. Designed by Louis Comfort Tiffany. Handmade, of course, in his studio over 175 years ago, she said. Matteo peeked in at 3 slender floral vases. That's what I'm here to confirm. As I assured Mr. Hernandez, their documentation is complete and unbroken. Coming from someone seated behind an original Hans Wegner, her certainty carried all the weight of a top luxury goods dealer, but that was the point of the desk. Matteo didn't fall for it. I'm sure you believe that Ms. dos Santos, but even the fingerprints on your documents can be easily faked. There's only one way to verify if these are original. Matteo opened his valise, producing a device that looked like a camera on a selfie stick. Please take the vases out and put them on the table. There's no need for that. They meet all the specs, including known flaws. Unfazed, Camilla pushed the dossier across the table to Matteo. He waved it away. She scowled. If you insist. Reluctantly, she carefully placed the 3 delicate pieces on the table. Matteo slowly passed the scanner over and around the vases. On the 4th, it beeped. Now we wait. I'm sure everything will be fine. He smiled wanly. Alfred displayed the results in his contacts. Note the pattern and the defect on the stem. It matches the spec exactly. Too much so. The large one is a reproduction. Matteo began packing up the scanner. That's impossible. Camilla methodically pulled open a drawer, producing a magnifier and aiming it at the vase in question. See, the glove mark on the stem. It's a well-documented flaw. It is. But what counterfeiter AIs never understand is that a perfect match doesn't make something real. Real has slack in it, tiny inconsistencies. A real hand is incapable of repeating itself perfectly. Camilla flushed for a second. If you sell it as a reproduction, Ms. Dos Santos, there's no reason to tell anyone you've been duped. But the other 2, they're original, right? Matteo nodded. Yeah, however, most of the value was in the fake. Sorry, we're not interested. Camilla looked shocked. She hadn't known. I just sent you my contact info. Next time you're about to make a purchase, call me. Good day. Matteo was crossing the street when Alfred interrupted him. I've received another priority message from your sister. Do you want me to display it? Open message. Text spilled across the corner of his vision. Got to be quick. The claim's fake. The chips were never missing. Matteo read the message again. Reply. What claim? Where are you? He stopped himself from adding, if this is about money. Renata begged, exaggerated, and sometimes disappeared for days. She did not send fragmented messages about insurance claims. When she wanted something, his sister sent elaborate fabrications laced with emotional blackmail, claiming she never had the same breaks as him to justify her request. This was different. Send, and unblock all messages from Renata. He waited on a bench outside the shop, watching a chauffeur-driven Rolls silver shadow slide silently by. No reply. Matteo read the message again. The words felt amputated, like she had been interrupted. It made him uneasy. He waited another couple of minutes, then told Alfred to flag every message from her, and tried to get back to work, reading background for his next appointment. The sun had just started to slide behind the glass towers of the vertical farm's ringing old town when he finally finished his report. His client insisted on detail, and Matteo was more than happy to provide it, for a price. Package report, invoice, and forward, he instructed. Any new messages from my sister? No. Pull up the last one. Matteo read it again. Got to be quick. That part of her message bothers me the most, Alfred. Agreed. Your sister is only in a hurry to borrow money. Your last message bounced. Shall I try again, sir? Yeah, please. Another bounce, sir. I'm getting concerned. Show me Renata's meat runner profile on that AI gig site, Operarius. It's like taking candy from babies, Matteo remembered her boasting. An AI contacts you, gives you a simple errand, like confirming damage in an insurance claim, even pays for transportation and lunch. Easy, peasy. Easy was Renata's favorite adjective when it came to work. Your sister's profile is not accepting new inquiries. That's odd. She never turns down anything that pays. Matteo opened the Operarius app and keyed in. Contact Renata, 42. That profile has been closed. Can I help you with anything else? The platform AI replied. I am looking for a meat runner with the following qualifications. Matteo paraphrased what he remembered of his sister's profile. Sometimes describing rather than naming would end-run a stubborn AI. It displayed a list. Renata wasn't on it. He tried again. Leave a message for Renata 42. That profile has been closed. The AI repeated. When? The connection abruptly ended. Matteo stared at the empty screen. Closed was one thing, but a non-agentic AI refusing to answer was unusual. He closed the app and dashed off a message to Renata's personal address. It bounced. Alfred, look for any mentions of my sister. She can't simply have vanished. Matteo waited a day, then contacted the police AI. After it told him there was nothing it could do, he went to a local station. Number 87 finally flickered onto the cracked flat screen at the front of the crowded waiting room. Matteo's sweaty clothes stuck to the rough chair as he stood. The only ventilation was a wobbling fan in the ceiling, which mixed the aroma of overheated humans into an undifferentiated soup. 87! A bored constable behind scratched bulletproof glass yelled. Matteo stood in front of the window for a moment before the man glanced up from some hidden screen. Yes? My sister's disappeared. She hasn't answered her messages, and her meat runner account was closed, Matteo explained. How long since you last heard from her? About 36 hours. It's not unusual for a meat runner to go incognito to do an agentic AI errand. The officer was trying to be patient, but clearly wanted to get rid of him. Here, this was the last thing she said. Matteo opened a screen on his handheld and pushed it toward the man. The constable barely looked at the message thread until he read the line about the claim. Which insurer? Adavatus. The man's posture tightened. His patience vanished. He handed the device back. If your sister hasn't shown up in a week, file a missing person report. She sends me a message about stumbling into a fraud, then vanishes. That's not a missing person. Probably confused a cheap VR with reality. She'll show up when she comes out of it. The constable stared past Matteo. Next. Had to try, Matteo sub-vocalized. Any luck with your search, Alfred? No mentions anywhere, sir, but I have an idea. Matteo reread the profile. Miguel Perez, paralegal, mobile, reliable, fast verification, signatures, and on-site documentation. He inserted 2 spelling mistakes so the profile wouldn't stand out on a gig board like Operarius. What do you think, Alfred? A good honeypot, sir. I suggest setting your hourly rate at 100 reals per task. That's just slightly above average. 100? That wouldn't even buy a coffee. This isn't New Rio, sir. Matteo had just finished a gig, checking for collision damage on a car in the upper-class neighborhood of Santa Teresa for a small-time AI claims adjuster. It took longer than he had expected, and he couldn't use Alfred for the paperwork. No meat runner could afford implants, only VR sim jacks, which came free with the first rental. He shuddered at what the gig's hourly rate would have worked out to. A man lay half across the stairs, lips moving, lost in some private VR fantasy. Matteo went to step over him, then stopped. For a second, with the hollow cheeks and the cheap sim pack jacked into his neck, the body on the floor could have been Renata. He hoped she hadn't gone down that road. When he got to his floor, the hall smelled of old cooking oil, unwashed laundry, and the acrid tang of overused VR sims. Matteo had to stop himself from gagging. He wondered if Renata even noticed any more. To complete his cover, he had rented a room with a shared bathroom in a ramshackle building near the capsule apartments where Renata lived, which weren't in any better condition. He poked his head into the washroom as he walked past. It was a study in deterring long-term residency. He tried to imagine his sister using it shoulder to shoulder with other tenants, guarding the contents of her pockets while pretending not to care. Matteo had dropped by her building to check if she was there. The resident is in arrears, the security AI had informed him. No access will be granted until her account is cleared. That's just like her, he cursed, then pictured Renata listening to that indifferent synthetic voice after a missed meal, pockets empty in the cold glare of security lights at 3 a.m. She lived like this, Matteo thought, but what bothered him more was how, up to now, he had carefully avoided picturing it. Alfred woke and surfaced a new request. General confirmation tasks. Duration, 3 days. Fixed fee, Matteo snorted. Barely covers the calories to walk across the street. Outside of the enclaves, it's enough for meals, Alfred reminded. Matteo looked at the sender, Adovados. His pulse quickened. I'll take it. The tuk-tuk stopped at the security gate of one of the new enclaves. Matteo slipped a few reals into a receptacle on the dashboard, then watched the rusty machine pick its way through the potholes before disappearing around the corner. Either side of the gate had been painted with a self-healing coating that absorbed graffiti. But across the street, the walls were so thick with spray paint that it was hard to know what they were made of. The top layer was currently a crude caricature of an enclave resident being pulled apart by dogs. Matteo guessed the residents had their window tint on full when they left. He was there to confirm the condition of a fire-damaged property. A CCD camera swiveled his way as he walked up to the gate. "State your business," a surly voice demanded through a tinny speaker. Matteo held up the plastic access card the Adovados AI had given him. "I'm here to confirm damage on an insurance claim." There was a pause. Then the gate slid open. A burly guard was standing on the other side. "A meat runner?" He looked down his nose at Matteo. "At least you're not as disgusting as most. Let me see that pass." His eyes unfocused as he checked something on his contacts. Matteo made a note not to use his. "Right. I'm to accompany you to the address," the guard explained. The address was a sprawling bungalow with enough square footage to house half a favela apartment block. Yellow emergency tape had been draped across the entrance. Inside, the damage was confined to the kitchen. One scorched wall, a melted stovetop, discolored cabinets above, and a burnt plastic smell the high-end ventilation system had failed to scrub out. "Smart stove malfunction," the guard explained. "Owner was out. People like this don't cook. The kitchen's for show." The guard's comment triggered something in Matteo. A kitchen meant to signal domesticity while entirely avoiding it wasn't much different than the fake vase. Both were invested in appearance as a distraction from the truth. Matteo pulled out a beat-up tablet he had bought at a second-hand automat and took a few notes, then photographed the scorch pattern, the counter, the control panel, and finally drilled into the appliance logs until he found the last inbound command. He took a picture of the screen and handed the device to the guard. "I need an iris scan to witness the site data." Once the guard was finished, Matteo added his own biometrics, geotagged the upload, and transmitted the file. "That's it. I'm done here." The guard let him out and then insisted on patting Matteo down. "Nothing. That's a first," he laughed. "He's clean. Clean for a meat runner," escorting him back to the gate. "Okay, marked in the log," a scratchy voice replied. Once outside the enclave wall, Matteo found he could not let it go. The search itself was nothing. It was the casual routine of it that clung to him like stale cigarette smoke. This must have been normal for Renata. The thought made his own discomfort feel like an indictment. He reactivated Alfred. "Compare my local copies to the submitted files," Matteo said. "Differences only." 2 images opened side by side in his vision. At first they looked identical. Alfred isolated a patch of glare across the shot of the inbound command log. "Zoom in." The glare became pixelated noise. "Stop." It took Matteo only a second. "It's been added and covers the originating address," he said. It was familiar ground, a fake flaw precisely inserted to look like human error. Someone turned on the stove remotely, and that IP address was obscured to hide it. The sun was at its zenith, softening the asphalt of the shadeless storage lot enough to make it spongy underfoot. Matteo felt like he was melting as he finished counting the scratched luxury Chinese EVs. 49, 50. He geotagged and time-stamped his photos, then watched the progress bar in the Operarius app crawl across the screen. He did 3 more out-of-office gigs, a policy signing in an overcooled office tower, and 2 minor damage claims so trivial that he was surprised they needed confirmation. Back in his room at the end of the day, sweaty and tired, Matteo collapsed onto an old mattress that doubled as his couch. He examined the handheld, wondering, then turned the thing off and covered it with blankets. "Alfred, wake up." "Sir?" "Show me the anomalies you've documented." Highlighted data filled his vision. Each submitted file contained minor changes, all made in a manner that suggested human error. An extra image in the EV damage report, 51 rather than 50, a counting error a human could easily make. A paragraph deleted from the signed policy could be a sloppy copy and paste. The changes were never enough to trigger an audit, but enough to tilt liability. Matteo flipped between the originals and submissions until his eyes caught something familiar. "Stop," he said. "There. That lengthened shadow, the noise pattern, it's so subtle it could pass for sensor error." Matteo leaned back on the mattress and stared at it. "Again, it's almost the same as that vase. Not identical randomness, but generated by similar code, clearly added." "The effect per claim would be a fraction of a percentage," Alfred said. "Per claim," Matteo repeated. "That would make it systemic, a massive fraud, buried pixel by pixel. Alfred, contact the security AI at Renata's building and offer to settle her debts. I need access to her capsule." "You think she hid something?" Matteo stared at the altered files still hanging in his vision. "I think my sister survived this long by always assuming she was being hustled." Renata's capsule's storage locker hung open. Her place had already been searched. Her clothing had been turned out, lying strewn around the tiny space. Anything easy to pawn was gone. Matteo crawled into the cramped tube, forcing himself not to rush. After years of coaxing the details from an object's surface to betray its true nature, he knew patience was needed, and scrutinized Renata's capsule, trying to see the pattern hidden in the chaos. Clothes strewn about just a bit too much, the mattress disturbed in a way to say it's been looked under, so the untrained eye would believe there was nothing left to find. What detail didn't belong? His eyes went to the lighting grill, where the dust had been disturbed in a small crescent. He reached up and pried the cover loose. A burner phone dropped into his lap.
"I knew you kept something,"
he whispered. To be continued.
If you enjoyed this story, please share it with your friends or leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps new listeners find us and keeps the podcast going. If you'd like to connect with us, please email makeshiftstories@gmail.com or visit our website at makeshiftstories.com. Makeshift Stories is released in the first week of each month. This month's story was written by Vern Hume, aka Alan V. Hare, and read by Steve Peterson. Opening and closing themes were composed and recorded by Matthew Erdmann. Audio production and editing by Vecada Studios. Makeshift Stories is released under a Creative Commons non-commercial, attribution, no derivative license